What's going on, guys? Kevin here from thesportsgeek.com, and in this video, I'm going to go over my DraftKings Conference Championship picks. So before we move on to this week's picks, let's take a look back at last week's Divisional Round picks. And then I also promised you guys on Twitter that I would break down my main lineup from last week. So I'm going to break that down and then go over a couple of other winning lineups I had this week. It was a great week for me in the Divisional Round. So I'll take a look at those and then we'll go over my Conference Championship picks. Hope for another great week. All right, so let's take a look back at the divisional picks I gave out in the video. On the left here, we have some solid picks. I had my number one quarterback receiver combo with Palmer and Fitzgerald. Palmer put up 26 points. Fitzgerald had a monster night. He put up 34 points. Floyd had 2 touchdowns, put up 17 points. Baldwin has to be included with the solid picks with 16 points. He outscored guys like Demaryius Thomas and Sanders. And then on the right-hand side, we had a couple busts. I had Kelsey, only 8.3 points. I was expecting more from him. And Cardinals defense only put up 4 points. There wasn't too many high-scoring defenses this week, but I was a little disappointed with the Cardinals at 4 points. And then I also gave out the top-scoring quarterback, Russell Wilson, as my other quarterback play on Periscope. So if you guys aren't following me on Twitter, make sure you follow me at Kevin Sportsgeek, and that way you'll get updates on when I get on Periscope and do some live chats with you guys. Instead of doing an email this week with just 4 games on the slate, I just did the live Periscope, gave out some plays there, and also answered a bunch of questions. So if you guys aren't following me on Twitter, make sure you do that, and hopefully I'll do another Periscope this week. I ended up having a great week. As you guys who were on the Periscope chat heard, I switched over to Wilson as my number one quarterback, stacked him with Baldwin in a bunch of different lineups. I also had a bunch of Palmer lineups too with Fitzgerald, but Wilson ended up cashing me a bunch of money. So we'll talk about that in this upcoming clip. Let me just switch over to DraftKings. Okay, so first I'm going to start off with my main lineup of the week. I broke this down in a video of how I put together this lineup, but I lost that video, so I'll just talk about it here. This is in the $500K Thunderdome. Obviously, don't recommend this to most people. It's a $5,300 entry. There's 100 people, a lot of sharp players in this contest. I placed 13th and won $12,500. I didn't think I was going to cash after Saturday, but ended up with a pretty big score here. So it was a pretty good lineup, as you can see. 149 points, but first I'll just talk about how I came up with this lineup. So the first thing I did was I put in David Johnson at running back. I wanted him 100%. He was the player I wanted most in all of my lineups. I pretty much had him. I had him in about 95% of my lineup. So I wanted David Johnson in there 100%. So I just clicked his name first, got him into the lineup. The next thing I did was I wanted to go with my number one quarterback receiver stack, which ended up being Wilson and Baldwin. I talked about this on Periscope. I switched to Wilson because I projected his ownership to be a fraction of Palmer's, and I was actually right about that ownership percentage. Wilson was only 9% owned in this one. Palmer was 40% in this particular contest. So I had Wilson and Palmer projected for the same number of points, and they were roughly the same price. Wilson was $300 more. So when you have 2 players that you project to get the same points, you want to go with the lower ownership as long as they're the same price or similar price. So in this one, Wilson, I projected was going to be a fraction of the ownership, and I thought he would get close to the same points as Palmer. I thought they would both be the 2 highest scoring quarterbacks of the week. So that's who I rostered in all my lineups, was Wilson and Palmer. So my main one was Wilson. So I locked in Wilson and Baldwin as my main stack. And then I still wanted Larry Fitzgerald 100%. He was my favorite wide receiver of the week. So I locked in Larry Fitzgerald as well. So I had 4 players locked in then. And then I also really wanted Edelman if I could make it work. So I ended up making it work. Locked in Edelman. He was the 5th player I locked in. And then I kind of worked around with the other players, other positions, running back, tight end, flex, and defense, and came up with Tyler Lockett as my second receiver with Seattle. For these small slates, I'm mostly always playing 2 receivers with my quarterback. Not every time, but a lot of the times, if I think I'm going to pick the highest scoring quarterback, 2 of his receivers are usually going to do pretty well. So with this one, I had either Kearse or Lockett to choose from, and just working with these other players, I ended up with Lockett. Unfortunately, he only got about a little less than half the points that Kearse ended up getting, but he still put up 16.5 points, so that was all right for me. And then I ended up with Rodgers at tight end. He was my second favorite tight end of the week for the value. I liked Kelsey and Rodgers. I was going to go cheap at tight end and just hope that Olsen and Gronk didn't have huge games. They had big games, but I still ended up doing okay. Going with Rodgers here, a little cheaper. And then defense was locked in last, so the next thing I did was lock in Spencer Ware. And this was the big bust for me. I won't talk about it too much, but basically I thought that Kansas City was going to score around 21 points. I had them covering the game, and I had the game going over. So around 21 to 24 points. I thought that Ware would put up about 15 DraftKings points, maybe more, if they got close to the end zone and gave him the ball a couple times for a couple touchdowns. So I really liked Ware. He practiced in full Friday, so he was dealing with I believe his ankle injury, practiced full Friday and looked good in warmups on Saturday. So I really liked him this week. I thought he'd be their number one running back. He had a good game last week. He had a pretty good game in week 17, I believe it was. He was turning into their number one back over West, and he ended up getting 0 touches. I guess he must have tweaked his ankle again or something Saturday during the warmups, and no one really saw it because everyone thought he was going to be playing. And he didn't play at all. So that was unfortunate for me, but that's how I came up with that lineup. I wish I went somewhere else on running back for a bigger score, but I still play. So that was pretty good. My main lineup of the week got 149 points. So pretty decent there. And then I had some other huge scores this week. I'll just quickly go over them. $300 blitz. I had 2 entries and placed 5th and 8th. So $300 to enter this blitz. And I won $5,000 and $3,000, so that was awesome. Again, just had my top stack with Russell Wilson and Baldwin in each of these. Larry Fitzgerald, Edelman, Jermaine Kearse in this one. So 2 really good lineups there. And then this was my best lineup of the week. 211 points, came second out of 31,944 people. Pretty crazy. $9 entry, won $10,000 here. I had 100 lineups in this contest. So that was $900 worth and ended up cashing 13,000 and something. So pretty good lineups going here. You can see this one was pretty elite. And I'll tell you guys what I did here, a little bit of strategy. So what I did was I had a bunch of different lineups, and a lot of them had David Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald only from the Saturday games. And as you can see, they had pretty good games. So I was left in a good position going into Sunday, but I had a ton of lineups with really similar players. So a lot of similar players. I wanted to change my exposure a little bit to some of those players that I wasn't too confident on. So I swapped out some running back and receivers and ended up getting a couple lineups with Stewart and Bryant in it. And as you can see here, Stewart put up 27 points and Bryant put up 31. So I swapped out. I had so many lineups that were really similar that if a couple players did poorly, I wouldn't place well. So I didn't want all that exposure. Swapped out a couple of them to some different players and then end up hitting here with Stewart and Bryant. So that was a good payday. And then the last one here is a Sunday only contest. You can see I finished 7th and 78th, and that was out of over 7,000 people. It was a $27 entry. You can see 7th was good for $2,000. So I had a couple really good lineups here in this contest. Went with a similar stack, the Russell Wilson, Baldwin, and then some other players because it was only Sunday only. I couldn't have my other top plays in there. So I ended up throwing Kearse in there for a double stack with Seattle players. Kind of stacked that game with Stewart and Olsen. So pretty good cash there. And overall, just an amazing weekend for me at DraftKings. So hopefully, again, we can do something like this in the conference championship round. So not only did I have a great week at DraftKings, I got a bunch of great emails. First one here, Kevin said he won $1,833 in one tournament and just over $2,000 for the weekend. Congrats, Kevin. Brandon said he was close to getting top 5. He would have won thousands, but he won $500. So that's still big. Congrats, Brandon. Maurice said that CJ Anderson Kearse combo was killer. He won $120 in $11 in entries. So if you guys weren't on the Periscope chat, Anderson and Kearse were 2 of the guys I talked about. So congrats to you, Maurice. Congrats to everyone who emailed me who I couldn't answer or couldn't put up here. And if you didn't win last week, I hope you win big this week. All right, so let's get on to some of my favorite NFL Conference Championship picks. This week, I'm just going to go over some of the lower priced players that I like. I obviously like most of the players that are high priced. They're elite players. They should be in some of your lineups. But in this video, I'm going to go over some of my favorite lower priced players. So Carson Palmer, favorite quarterback, 6,800. He put up 26.96 DraftKings points last week with 3 touchdown passes and over 300 yards. The Panthers gave up the highest quarterback score last week to Wilson, showing they can be picked apart. Palmer's a great quarterback, so especially if he falls behind in this game and has to throw quite a bit, I'm guessing he'll have a pretty big game. He scored 28 or more DraftKings points 4 times this year, and he's got lots of great receivers to target. So if this gets into a bit of a shootout, I really like the chances of Palmer putting up close to 30 points, maybe more. Obviously, we got to do a stack here this week, so I'm going to stack John Brown at 5,200 with Palmer. I obviously like Fitzgerald and Floyd again this week, but Brown should be much lower owned, and he does have high upside. He still caught 5 passes for 82 yards versus the Packers last week. It was a pretty quiet performance, put up 13.4 DraftKings points. He scored double-digit DraftKings points 12 times this year, with over 20 DraftKings points twice, and one of those games he put up 31.6 DraftKings points. He's a deep threat, so he's got high upside. He's going to be low owned. I like Palmer this week, and I like John Brown to have a pretty good game. My value play at running back this week is going to be Steven Jackson at $3,000. Very risky play. He's going to be in 20% of my lineups at most, but I think that it will make sense to go pretty cheap at one position this week to spend your money elsewhere. Try to go for the risky play, and Steven Jackson is going to be one of my favorite cheap plays of the week. He looks to have taken over the rushing role in the Patriots backfield. He had 6 carries last week compared to Bolden, who had 0. Denver has a pretty good secondary, so I think if the Patriots get close to the end zone, they're going to have to run the ball a little bit. Jackson could get 1 or 2 cheap touchdowns from the 1-yard line. If he puts up 15 points, that would be awesome at $3,000. So I'll take a risk on Jackson in some of my lineups. So another cheap wide receiver I like is Ted Ginn Jr. at $4,300. He's coming off a no-catch performance versus Seattle, where he had 1.1 DraftKings points on 11 rushing yards. So he should be pretty low owned this week. But he is playing in a game with a high total of 47 points. And Cam should be throwing a lot more this week. Last week they went up big and really didn't have to throw much, really didn't have to force anything. So I think he'll have to kind of air it out a little bit this week. And Ted Ginn Jr. is his favorite target. He's a deep threat. He scored 25 or more DraftKings points in 3 straight weeks from week 13 to 15. So I should say that Olsen is probably his favorite target, but Ted Ginn Jr. is his favorite wide receiver target. He likes to throw it deep to him. So I think Ted Ginn Jr. is a pretty good value play at $4,300. And then moving up a little bit at wide receiver, I like Emmanuel Sanders at $6,300. Earlier this year versus New England, he had 6 catches for 113 yards and 20.3 DraftKings points. He outperformed Thomas last week versus Steelers, where he had 5 catches and 85 yards. And he's been pretty consistent this year. He's had only 5 games with single-digit DraftKings points. And he does have the massive upside. He put up 39.5 DraftKings points in week 15. So I like Sanders over Thomas this week. And I think the price is pretty good at $6,300. So instead of giving out a defense this week, I'm just going to talk about the 4 different defenses. They're pretty similar in price, and defensive scoring is really random, so I don't want to just give out one defense. I think you guys should look at all defenses, see what fits in your lineup. For example, if you guys are playing a lot of Cardinals and Panthers players, you might want to go with the Broncos or Patriots as your defense, and vice versa. If you have a lot of Broncos and Patriots in your lineup, you might want to go from a defense from the other game. So kind of go with your gut feel, go with what works with your lineup. First off, we got the Cardinals here. They're 4th in the league in interceptions, just 20th in sacks, but they do average over 10 fantasy points per game. The Panthers, who have playmakers on defense, they average 11.2 fantasy points per game at home. They led the league with 24 interceptions, and they were 6th in sacks. So they're going against a tough offense, but they do have a really good defense. The Broncos were 1st in the league in sacks, but they are facing Brady, who doesn't throw many interceptions. He's got 7 this year. They should be low owned though, so if you pick the Broncos and they go off for a huge game, maybe score a couple of special team touchdowns or something like that, the Broncos could win you a tournament. So low owned defenses are always good if you think they're going to score high. And they've got the Patriots, 2nd in the league in sacks, and they're going against Peyton, who has thrown 17 interceptions. I think they're a great play this week, but I do think they will be highly owned. That's it, guys. So if you enjoyed this video, let me know by clicking the thumbs up button on YouTube so I know to keep making videos like this. This will pretty much be my last NFL video of this season, but if you want me to continue videos during the offseason like NBA, NHL, and MLB, just let me know by clicking the thumbs up button. And if you guys don't already have my free lineup generator tool, make sure you click on the lineup tool link in the YouTube description below. That will get you that for free and also give you my email updates where I email out other picks. All right, guys, and as always, good luck this weekend. Hope you make some money. Cheers.